Okay, we're going to start with a blank. The first thing I want you to make note of is that these are the shoulders down here. Everything below this is the neck area here where the side cuts are. And these are going to be the shoulders down here. So if you take a look at that on the side view, this is the bottom part of his chin. And this is the back of his neck up here. So the first thing I want you to do is write front, right there. Okay. So the next thing in this, the way to attack this or to approach this is to establish the center point of the top of the head. So how do you find that? Well, you put a board on there and you go across it. You can get any kind of a straight edge will work. So the idea is not to draw the line from corner to corner, but we want to find the center. So we want to just make an X in the middle. So that's the center. So the next thing we're going to do is we want to make a cylinder. So we want to leave the full width of it, but we're going to round over to make a cylinder. I actually made up a template, a round template out of plastic, and because I've done so many of these darn things, and somewhere amongst all this kit here I got one, but we won't worry about it unless I can pick it out right fast. No, it's not handy. Okay, so then you put your glove on once you're satisfied with that circle, and make sure that you've got as much we're going to make a cylinder out of this, and the cylinder is going to go right down but not including the shoulders. Okay, so in order to do that, I use a knife, but you can use a gouge. I'll do one side and then give you an idea. You'll find that the wood is half decent wood. It's Minnesota wood, and I've had it for a year now, but it still seems to carve good. Okay, so you can see how I've got the one cylinder side of the cylinder started. I'll carry on. I'll do it all the way around. So we've got the front here, so we know that the nose is going to be out here, so we got to point the nose. So this block has the option of deciding where you want a nose to point. So it doesn't have to be straight on. Because it's a round cylinder, now we can change. That's the benefit of making it a round cylinder, is now we can change the direction as to where the nose is going to point with respect to the shoulders, with respect to the body. So we can change and decide which way we want that to go. It can be straight on, but typically we move it a little bit. You can't move it too much, because when you move your head past 45 degrees, your shoulders start to turn. Okay? So you can only move it like half that 45 degrees in order to make that work. So just decide on where you want that to point, and I'm going to move mine just a little bit. I'm going to move it just off center, just by a little bit, so that now I can decide, line up, because we put that center in the top. Now I can put a line right straight through from that, using that as my center point. Now I can point my, now I can point my head. Maybe. now you can see that it's a bit off. Notice that I've used, I took a cheap old L bracket, and I use that for my guide, and that's makes a simple way of pointing a face. Alright, so now it's all the way down, and I typically would do it down the back as well, even though it's not important down the back. So that points my nose. That tells me that's where I'm going to put my nose. And if I want to have the head a little bit crooked, I could turn that one way or the other a little bit as well. In other words, if I wanted to bend his head a little bit one way or the other. So now I'm going to use that same center point there. Now I want to get a 90-degree angle in there. So I'll use that same point and come across here on a 90-degree angle. And I would eyeball that. So that gives me the orientation of the quadrants at the top. Okay, and then continue that down on the sides. Both sides. So there it is. I mean, that's a quadrant there, and there's one there, and so on. And that all starts from that top here. Point the nose the direction you want, and then create the 90-degree angle in here so that you create the X at the top. You can see in the handout what I'm talking about. First of all, you make the circle on the top, and you make the triangle or the cross 90 degree, and then bring those lines down the side. So what those lines down the side do is that creates where the ear is going to sit. The ear typically on a human, the ear is halfway, the front of the ear is halfway back on the head. So the ear then, if this is the front, if this is this front here, and you can see this is his chin here, so the ear will fit in here somewhere. Okay, so it'll be behind that line, depending on what hair or sideburns or whatever is going to be in front. You have to leave a certain amount of material there, but basically that's where the ear is going to sit behind. Okay, so the ear is behind that line. So now we got to divide up the side of the face, and we're going to put two lines in. We're going to give it 3 sections. And if you've got a Mulrooney chin, you want to leave more material on the bottom. Okay, so the first line up will identify where the bottom of the nose is going to be, and this line here will identify where the brow is going to be. That's where your eye socket is going to fit in. Okay, so you can vary these widths, and you can see in this diagram here they're all the same, but you can change that to reflect the character of the individual that you're trying to establish. But what I'll do is I'm just going to arbitrarily decide on where I'm going to put those, and I like to leave a little bit more on the bottom, and so it's something like that. Alright, so then those lines, once I've divided that up, I want to bring those lines across, and notice I put my finger on the bottom of on the top of the cutout, and now I'm going to bring that line right across. So that lines up and establishes where the brow is going to be, and the brow typically identifies where the top of the ear is going to be. So once again, I'm going to move the pencil mark down, and that typically will be where the bottom of the nose is, and it could or could not be the bottom of the ear. You might want to have a longer ear. So there it is. The two lines go right around. And we're going to do one more, and that is right there. We're going to raise that up just a little wee bit, and that's going to be a straight line on the curve, but it'll end up where the top of the ear mark is and over on the other side. And what that is the forehead. Okay? So now we got to get this flat across just below and leave that top round. And I'll use a V-tool to come across. I stay away from my line, then work my way into it. So I want to get this area in here all perfectly flat. And I can use a gouge, or I could use a knife. So and I want to extend it right from the one line to the other. I like to leave the line, the pencil mark on, but from one side to the other. Get a knife in there to make that all nice and smooth. So can you see that that's all perfectly flat? I want that as flat as possible. And I'll do the other side. So the profile, now that we've got our nose pointed, okay, and we got a flat spot on both sides right back to the front of the ear, we're going to draw on there the profile. And you'll notice that from the halfway mark here, in other words, the front of the ear, to the front of that piece of wood, about halfway is where the forehead is. So there's a mark we can put on. All right. And the nose is going to be where we left our mark there. And it sticks out of the face, and then we're going to create a chin down here below. If it was a Mulrooney chin, it would be coming out. If it was a Joe Clark chin, it would be going back. You know how Joe has no chin whatsoever, it kind of disappears. So then the rest of it is going to be nose. Well, the nose has substance. If you grab a hold of the end of your nose, you'll feel that there's a ball there on the end of your nose. Okay, so we got to leave a flat spot. So that's a flat spot there. So now we've got to get from the forehead back and a little bit of a notch right there. All right, so there he's got a wonker of a nose. Now you can vary that. If you don't, this is the best part about it. If you're not comfortable with that, then you take a pencil and you erase your mark and you want to move it a bit further forward, you can do that. Okay? And the nose, I'm going to use a straight cut for the nose, but a nose can be curved or whatever. All right? So there's roughly what we're going to work with. So what I want to do now is, I've got that design and I'm comfortable with that profile, then I want to remove this wood straight across so that I'm going to end up with an equal amount on both sides. And you can see on this diagram here what I mean. I'm going to remove the wood so that this block here is going to be perfectly flat across there, and it's going to, this side is going to equal that side, this side is going to equal this side on the chin. Okay, so then I'll just do that typically with a knife to start it. And I only had to draw the profile on one side because I'm going to put my center line back in, and that'll tell me whether or not I've got it square or not. So let me just do that for the bottom part and just give you an idea. So here's my center line here, and it's going to come straight down so that this side here and this side here are the same. And if it isn't the same, well then you take it off to make it enough wood to make it the same. So let me just complete that. So there it is with you got the profile, and then you've got the wood removed straight across on both sides. So now we've got the side profile done. Now we got to decide on what the front profile is going to be. And you can see in this diagram right here that all I drew in there was a slight curve all the way down. Typically I like to have a curve in like that, and then a curve the other way coming down. So that creates the hollow in the side of the face, and then the jaw that comes down. And I do draw that on both sides, so try and get that equal. And I can only do that by putting it face down and figuring out how, so that this distance out here and this distance out here is roughly at the same level. And you got a hollow here and a hollow there, a hollow here, and then one down there. So that wood then is removed right back to this line here. But so you're drawing on the profile, the profile straight in this time. And you can make that, if you want a long thin face, you move it in further. I do it this way, and it's a cheat situation because this gouge here is the perfect shape for it. This is a number 5 20 millimeter, and it works out just fine by going straight in this way and then turning it over and going straight in that way. I create those two profiles very simply. Alright, so it's a cheating using the tools that you've got. If you don't have a big tool, you can use a little tool and do the same. And you can do whatever shape down the side you want. Likewise with the profile. The profile is whatever shape. And over a period of time, once you've done a few of these, you'll get a particular way that you like to do it. So whatever works. Alright, so I'll go ahead and I've got it drawn on there, and it looks pretty even. In other words, this distance over here that I'm going to remove and this distance on the other side that I'm going to remove look to be pretty darn close. Okay, I'll remove that and then bring it around. Like just jab it in, and then the other way, turn it over and jab it in. And now I'll use a V-tool to remove that piece coming up the side. So there's the side of the face, more or less set up. One side. I'll do the other. So there it is with the profile established, and I'm not particularly liking that. I think I'll move that in just a little bit more, make it a little bit narrower face. Just not too happy with the way that turned out. If the nose anchors the face, then we've got to decide on the the width of the nose, and that it was very difficult to try and draw this. So I've got to establish the width of the nose, so I've got to establish the shape on both sides. I'm just going to create a flat spot on both sides. So if an eye were there, and just by putting a dot there kind of it helps you visualize it, then you can picture the size of the nose. So I'm going to take it as wide as I can, and the hollow on the outside of the face goes all the way up to that eye pocket here, that notch that we took out here. So I'm going to remove that wood all the way up, and that's what this diagram here was trying to illustrate, is that the V-tool I'm going to use is going to be flat against the side of the nose, but I'm going to remove that wood all the way up to the eye socket so that I've got this edge established, both sides. So that's going to be the width of my nose, and I think everybody says it's very difficult to add wood on, but so that you've got to decide on the width of your nose, and then you can always skinny it down. And you can see right away that this side here is shorter than this side here, and I need to bring this side in just a little bit. Can you see that difference? So I'm going to bring that in. Try and make them the same. There, that's a lot closer. So then after I do that, now I'm going to have wings on my nose. In other words, I'm going to create a triangle on the side. Now, typically a male nose, and that's what we're going to do, has wings on it going up. A female nose might be straight across, and in some cases the nose wings can come down and be lower. But either way, we're going to have a flat spot on the bottom side of the nose. We're going to have a flat spot underneath there. So I draw that line on both sides, and so that allows me to create, see this flat spot I'm referring to here? And then I got to decide on how far up the wings I'm going to take it. So here's the nose, okay? And I want to remove the triangle on both sides. In order to get that symmetrical on both sides, I'm going to draw a line straight across the nose, and hopefully I'll be able to get both sides the same. So now I can put my triangle in there because I've got the flat spot on the bottom of my nose. So there, that becomes my triangle. That is a little bit hard to see. Can I zoom in a bit more on that? Yeah, there. So you can see there's a flat spot on the bottom and then the wing on both sides. And in order to remove that piece of wood, all I'm going to do is put my knife in there and push the tip in and then remove that piece of wood. Just as simple as that. So first things first, I remove a bit of wood on both sides so that I've created the width of my nose at the bottom, and now I create the flat spot on the bottom of my nose, and then I'm going to remove the wing on both sides. And if it doesn't look quite right, well, you adjust it to make it work right. I'll pass this around as well. So there it is with the nose established. So now we got to create what is called the smile line. And so I draw another horizontal line across. Remember, we drew the line right across there for the the top of the wing, or the bottom, I guess, of the wing, the angle. So now I got to create that curvature that goes in here that is for the top of the wing. So I draw another line straight across above it, like that, so that then I can create the smile line. And the smile line is that line that starts at the top of your wing, the top of our nose here, and comes down. Now what happens there, it creates the total expression on the face. So if he's a happy guy, then this will have a big smile in here, won't he? So then you'd want to have this line come out of there and then come down one way or the other in order to create the expression for that smile. If he's a sad guy, well then it'll come straight down and the mouth shape will likely turn down just a little bit. And if he's a neutral guy, just a straight line across, then once again you're going to address the side, the smile line as it comes down. So I'm going to give this guy a little bit of a happy face and just curve it down something like that on the side of his face. And so I try and do the same on the other side. And so in order to do that, in order to carve that, I'm going to say that's roughly where I want it. I can always move it a little bit. So I'm going to jab my V tool in right at that line. So can you see that? Can I get it maybe a little bit closer? Okay, there. Can you see that? I jabbed it in there. I'm going to jab my V tool in, and as soon as I get it in there, now I'm going to turn it and bring it down. And see how it creates that smile line? Right there. If I put a pencil mark in there, you might be able to see it better. Alright, so that's that. So as what we're doing in effect is we're working our way back into the face. And you'll see now that as soon as you do that, you'll see that the nose is halfway out of the face and halfway in to the face. And that's exactly the way our face is. The nose is halfway out and halfway in. So by creating that smile line, that's how you do that. So I turn that upside down, and I'll jab that in again on the other side. Turn it, bring it down. I'll put a pencil mark in there again so you can see it. Again, that smile line can be whatever shape you want. I'll pass this around so you can have a look at it. We got to round the mouth now. So typically I put a stop cut in right at the bottom of the nose, and then I start to round this up to that stop cut. So I'm going to get that all nice and rounded. And so it looks nice and round.
Sorry, folks.
And so it's rounded all the way down. So you can see the difference between the other side that hasn't been rounded and this side here. So I've got a nice surface in here. What I'm doing basically is creating a surface for me to put my mouth on. Okay, so do that on both sides. Okay, so now to shape the top of the nose, we got to establish where the bridge is going to be. So I'm going to establish my width there. So I want to get equal amount on both sides of the the center line. I want to curve the top of the eye, where the eye is going to fit in, and I want to end up where the wing is in the nose. That give you the idea? So I draw it on, make sure you're happy with it. If you're not happy with it, erase it, use your steel eraser or whatever, get rid of it. And then I'm going to take a number 11, also called a veneer, and I'm going to remove some of that wood in there. And so I gradually remove wood. I'm going to take a little bit at a time here, and the curvature on of the tool will create the transition between the side of the face and the nose. So I come across now. I'll put a little stop cut in there. So now you can see now, if I turn that sideways, see how the eye now is set back in and the nose is revealed. The side of the nose is there. I'll massage that a little bit and round over the side of the face as I go. Turn that tool or that veneer on its side, and that'll give me the shape I want. For those who are always particular, it's a number 11 4mm that I use. It can be use the biggest tool that'll fit, the biggest veneer that'll fit. That's it. I'll do the other side and pass it around. I'm going to make a storyboard for a mouth. So what we're going to end up with is a completed mouth down here. See if I can run that in. So you can see where I'm going here. The mouth is down here, completed, but we're going to start it very simply and work our way down. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw on the shape of the mouth, which is going to be a gentle curve. And that's going to be in every one of these blocks. See these individual blocks? We're going to put that in every one. We're going to keep it a little bit on the high side because eventually we're going to need the space below the mouth in order to create the bottom lip and then eventually the chin. Okay, so we're going to keep it a little bit on the high side. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to create a nice gentle curve. And we're going to start here. And you're going to draw that on every one of those squares all the way down. Okay? So we'll go ahead and do that to start with. So there it is with the curves, one curve all the way down. I used a pencil, but you can use pen. Okay, so the first step in this is we drew it on, so we got it drawn on. The next step is to put a stop cut in. We're going to put a straight up and down cut in that notch, in that mark. So I'm going to start on the outside and I'm going to come just past the inside and I'm going to push that knife in pretty deep and I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to do it on the other side and I'm going to come just past the halfway mark on both cuts. Stop cut. And that's it. And we're going to do that in every one of the cuts all the way down. Okay? Put in a center line. And then we're going to create the top lip. Now, don't worry too much if this is crooked. This is only a practice board. But what we're going to do is we're going to put the tip of the knife in at the outside corner of that mouth, and then we're going to put the heel of the knife down at the center line on about a 45-degree angle. So I don't know whether you're going to be able to see this very well or not, but see that little chip that came out of there? It's only a very small chip. See that little chip right there? That's going to be the top lip, and it's just enough to create a little shadow in there. A male, older person has only a very small, thin upper lip. The tip of the knife goes in the outside, and the heel comes down to the center. Take that little chip out. So that creates the top lip. This is an important part, and we tend not to do this, but it's a very simple trick. We got to remove a little triangle. On page 14, I've got this is laid out. This diagram is laid out. But here we go. So I want to put a slight angle coming out of the corner of the mouth, and I don't know whether can you see that. There we go. So I'm going to put it in straight in. And then I'm going to remove a little chip out of there. Yeah, there it goes. So there's the little chip removed. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. So straight in and then remove that little chip out of the corner. Can you see now that we've got that droop on both sides of the mouth right away? Okay. Once again, that's done all the way down. So there it is with all the cuts done on the outside corners. That's number 4 out of the way. Next step is to carve the bottom lip. We've created the hollow on both sides, so we're going to take and because this is rounded like a mouth mound is, we're going to put the knife on. Get a little bit tighter here. There. So about a 45-degree angle, I'm going to put the blade of the knife on, and I'm just going to push it straight forward like that. Hopefully you get it equal. So can you see that chip comes right out? I'll do it again, go maybe a little bit deeper so you can appreciate it. So push it straight in, and then that, because you've got a stop cut in the middle, that creates this lip right here. Yeah, you can see that pretty good. Okay, and once again, don't worry about the sides. We'll come to them later. Just that one straight cut in. Okay, step number 6. Now, as we carved out this straight in here, now we've got a hole here, and we've got to remove that little bit of material that's in there. Can you see how that comes out of there? Just like that, so that rounds the lip by removing that little chip out of there. So it doesn't come all the way to the center, about half the distance between the center and the little notch. Remove that little chip, and that's on both sides. So I'll do the next one down, you can see that as well. So see how that removes it, and we get that nice round shape in there. Okay, number 7 is similar in that we have to do 3 cuts to do the bottom of the lip. So we want to establish a width to the bottom lip. There isn't a width to the top lip, but there is to the bottom lip. So I hold my knife so that I establish a width between the bottom, or that cut in the bottom of the lip, and I'm going to hold it like that. Then I'm going to turn my knife over so it's a 45-degree angle facing down. Push the knife in and remove that chip. See how that comes out? Okay, so I'll go ahead and the next one I'll show you. So I measure the width of the bottom lip that I want to maintain, and then I turn the knife on a 45-degree angle the opposite way, facing down, slide it in, and remove that chip. Simple. One more time. 45-degree angle facing down, and remove that chip. Okay? Okay, step number 8. So you can see we've got the mouth, the bottom lip is partially formed. So now we've got to get it from this flat spot here up into the corner here. So we're going to divide the distance in half from the center line to the corner of the mouth, and we're going to put a line right there. You see that line there? You don't have to put a line there. I'm going to mark it on there just so you know that it's going to end up about the halfway mark here between the center line and the corner of the mouth. Alright, so then when you put the knife in, you're going to put it in more or less straight up and down, slight angle. Depends on what kind of expression you want to create that. I like to have a little bit of an angle. About the tip of the knife in, I'm going to bring the heel down so that it's flat with the bottom part of this, the lip that I've already done. And then using that hollow that I've got in the hollow that I've got in there, I'm going to remove that chip. So that chip pops right out of there. See how it creates the side of that mouth? Okay. So it's the same on the other side. You can measure it if you want. Just get used to eyeballing it. So that then you end up with there's the kind of the pouty lip that you want. We can address different shapes of it later on, but that kind of gives you a basic foundation. So I'll go down and do the rest of them. So I use a gouge for the next one, and it's called a snot trough. And it's that section. If you take a look at every mouth, there seems to be, or the lip seems to have a point right there. And in order to do that, short of making curves on both top and on both sides of the top lip, you can accomplish that by tricking the eye simply by putting a gouge in like that. And you see how that creates that shape in there, that little hollow. And that's all there is to it. It's really that simple. It gives you that little extra. Just to let you know that Marv nearly always does a couple of different things too, and he'll put a little catch right in there. And can you see how that kind of gives it a little bit of emphasis on the one side? And 9 chances out of 10, he'll round over those sharp edges there, and maybe even put a little notch. You know how sometimes we have a little notch in the center of our bottom lip? So he'll put that little notch in there as well. Okay?
So you start at the top and work toward the lip with that snot trough.
The snot trough, I started at the top lip and worked up.
Oh, you do it?
Yeah, if the nose is there, I put a stop cut underneath the nose so that it goes right up to the nose. Okay, number 10 is when we'll work on the chin. Okay? Okay, number 10 is the chin. So we've got this lip here, that's the bottom, and then of course the other part of the V is the top part is right here. So see how this angle comes out here and this angle comes out here. So if you come straight down and you remove the wood that way and that way, then and remove this wood in here on both sides, what you've done in fact is started to create your chin. Okay? Now, lots of people will use a knife in there, and I prefer a gouge because then it creates me the round part of the chin coming down. and just continue that around. So can you see that there's the chin started there? Now there was always the question of how do you make a pouty lip? Well, all you do with a pouty lip is you remove material on the top lip in this area in here. You knock that back and that makes the lip pop out. The chin, if it's a Mulrooney chin, then you knock it off flat and it comes down like nearly like a flat pancake coming down there, doesn't it? If it's a Joe Clark, well then from the bottom lip it starts to curve back underneath the as well. So the chin is part of your, remember I said the facial expression is just this section here includes the chin. Okay? After that practice, we're going to now put a mouth on here. So I like to move my mouth up a little bit higher than what most would have it. So I like nearly 2/3 of the way up. And typically if you look at a mouth from the nose to the bottom of your lip, it's halfway. Okay? From the nose to the bottom lip, it's halfway between the nose and the chin. Okay? But what I like to do is I like to have it up higher, and I typically make it about 2/3. And I always start off with a straight line right there. Whether he is happy or sad, he's got a straight line right there. Now if he's sad, I would keep my hand on the bottom of his of the carving, and then I'm able to get that curvature going. You see how easy it is to make that sweep? Okay, and there's a sad mouth. If I want to make him happy, then I turn it upside down. And then that gives me the curvature I need. So a couple of practice ones on the outside. And then that gives me that nice curvature that I need to give him a happy smile. I might even want to move that up further, but we'll leave it there for now. So once again, it's a stop cut, just like you did on your practice board. Stop cut, and I usually go through 3 times. Try and get the tip of the knife in as deep as I can. Remember, with the knife you're not only cutting but you're displacing material, so you have to accommodate the width of the blade. So a stop cut, tip of the knife on the outside, heel down to the center mark, tip of the knife on the outside, heel down to the center mark, hook on both sides, straight in cut, put a 45-degree angle, round it off a little bit on both sides. Measure the width of your bottom lip, turn it 45-degree angle, push it in, remove that piece, halfway into the corner, a little bit of an angle. Remove that chip, halfway, a little bit of an angle, remove that chip, and by golly, there's a mouth. Don't make it any harder than what it is. I mean, we tend to make things a little bit too difficult. So now you're asking about the snot trough. Well, the snot trough, I'll undercut this a little bit, and I'll put a stop cut underneath the nose, and then I'll take my gouge and I'll And that's it. And you know, he doesn't look like too bad of a guy. You got kind of a bigger section up here where the mustache might be, but that's not bad. Okay? Giver. So the first thing to set up an eye is we're going to call this the nose side here. In other words, the nose sits on this side, and this is his, if it was on a caricature, this would be his left-hand eye. Okay? Nothing too serious here. Take a gouge, this happens to be, what, a number 7, 10 millimeter, and we're going to start by just making a, this is going to be a fair good size eye, so you're going to be on the caricature that you're carving, it's going to be bigger. So you're going to make a hollow just like that. So we're just making a hollow, and I put the gouge on this side and I put the gouge on that side, and that leaves a little bit of a hump. Can you see the little ridge in the middle? And that would be the top part of your eye. So do that in the middle of your 1 inch spacing here. So you're going to do that all the way down. So the next one, of course, will be in the middle of that square, that division. Okay?
Brian, is that different from the map we did?
Yes.
Top square was empty.
Yeah, we're going to use the top square this time because it's just going to be a hollow.
Okay.
This is number 1, just the hollow. Number 2 is going to be 3 dots. And again, this is the nose side, so I'm going to put 1 dot there, 1 dot a little bit lower on the outside, and the 3rd dot above. And so number 3 is going to do exactly the same thing. And it might seem a little bit ridiculous to do it so often, but it's good to get in the habit. So there's the 3 dots again. Hopefully they're roughly the same, only this time I'm going to join those lines together with a slight curve with the one on the bottom. So number 4 is going to be the 3 dots. Joined together. Only difference now is we're going to do the cuts. So now I like to carve on the outside of the lines because I'm lazy and I don't like to remove the marks. So I come just past halfway with the tip of my knife and I make that corner triangle in all the 3 corners of the eye. So there's 1 corner done, straight down, just past halfway. Again, I'm carving on the outside of the line. There's 2 reasons for that. I mentioned the first one about being lazy and not wanting to get rid of the pencil marks or the ink marks in this case. The other reason is your eye and mind again works together, and they see when you mark something up on a piece of wood, they see that the outside of that line, they don't see the inside of the line or the line right on. Alright, so that's it. Stop cuts all the way around. So the stop cut is all the way around the outside. So now we're going to lay this, have a real nice sharp knife with a good point on it, and we're going to lay this knife down not quite flat. We're going to take out each corner, and it'll only be a little bit of material. I get in closer on that. Can you see how small a piece that is? Very difficult to see. And we're going to take that out of each corner of the triangle. Just like that. And then a little bit on the bottom and on the sides. And that creates your eyeball. Can that get any closer? Can you see the eyeball in there now?
I missed you said take some out on the sides?
Yeah, so I'll do the next one and then you'll see. So I'm going to take the corner out of there. There. Now don't go too deep because otherwise you'll make it look like a buggy eye. Okay, so I got the 3 corners out.
You're right at the screen there.
Sorry,
That's good.
thanks. So 3 corners are out. That little. And now just a little bit like that. Can you see how that rounds the edge? And a little bit here. And that's got the eye.
Okay.
Step 6, I'll just take the knife and just kind of massage the eyeball to make it a little bit more rounded. Take off any sharp edges that happen to be in there. Something like that. So that was number 7, right?
6.
Number 6. Okay, so we rounded over the eye. Now number 7, just as we had to do the lips, when we put the little crook underneath both sides of the lip, that little triangle we put, what we created was the bottom lip fitting underneath the top lip. In other words, the top lip always fits over top of the bottom lip. The same thing is with an eye. In the corner of the eye, our top eyelid fits over top of the bottom eyelid. So to create that feature, what you do is, and I got to go a little bit wider, is you put your knife in that corner there and you just put it in straight, push it down. Okay, and now remove that little sliver underneath there and see how it creates that shadow in there right there. So what you've done is you've made the top eyelid fit over top of the bottom eyelid just by putting that. So it's a straight up and down cut and then an angle to bring it out underneath. Okay, do that all the way. So number 8 is going to be the bottom eyelid. So we got to start, the bottom eyelid is really a kind of a tight little section here. So I'm going to start it just outside the corner of the eye, just on the very outside corner, and bring it along really tight to the bottom of that cut for the eye. And I'm going to end up in that little hollow that we created over in the corner. So that is the bottom eyelid. So once again, it's just a very slight cut, and if you've got a small V-tool works in there fine too. You can't have enough V-tools. Now if you're going to put a sack in the eye, then that's that would come, this would still be there, and that big sack underneath the eye would come later. It comes down below. Okay, number 9. Number 9, we've got the bottom eyelid done. Okay, so now we got to do the top eyelid. And I want to follow roughly the line, the top shape of the eyeball. So I'm going to start out and up from where we did that little cut. And I'm going to lay the V-tool on its side. Notice that I'm creating a flat spot in that area there, and it's sharp on the top. So now I'm going to gradually bring that around, take little sweeps. And as I get on the inside, it gets a little bit narrower. So there is the top eyelid. Now, the only other thing is, I want to have that so that it comes out a little bit more on the side. So I take a little sliver out of the outside piece here. But see, there's a nice top eyelid sitting there. A simple eye, and yet it has all the features in it. Okay, and when we get to number 10, we'll dress it up just a little bit. So the 10th and final section here is crow's feet. And it's just a little bit of detail that we put on the outside of the outside corners of the eye to make them look a little bit older, although lots of young people have crow's feet as well. So I'm going to take a V-tool and just kind of sweep the eye out and make a little bit of a notch coming out of either side. Now it can, again, it can be any way, shape, or form. Typically this one would come out there. It could turn up, turn down. This one, this top one here, could be down lower if you want, depending on where that eyelid finished off. And then the only thing you got to remember is that somewhere in this general area here will be where the temple is on the carving. So that'll be a bit of a hollow, so you might have to redress that once you create the side of his face and the hollow in there. But that's the eye. Now all we got to do is put it on our carving. So here goes the eyes. I'm going to make a dot there and line it up and put a dot there. Notice that I'm right-handed, so I put this dot in first and then that dot so that then I could see them. Put one in and then I can judge the distance to the other one. A dot there, and try and get the same size. A dot there. Close. Now I'm going to determine that I want to put the top dot there and the top dot there.
Now for angry eyes, the top dot is in closer to the...
I would put, on an angry eye, I would move the dot in quite a bit closer, nearly above the one closest to the nose.
Okay, good.
Okay, and then you can join them together. And all the dots. Good sharp knife. And I'll go ahead and just do one eye. Take your time with it. Remember, it's a small little eye. You don't want to lose it. My hand is in the way, you can't see it. Outline it, stop cuts. Just a little bit out of each corner. There's the eyeball inside. Straight down cut for that little notch. Smaller V-tool to make it work in there. Bottom eyelid. top eyelid. Crow's feet. So there's a very simple eye. I might dress it up and make it a little bit rounder, but that's more or less it right there. Just have to do the other one now.